I know. Well, I said I chose Wi-Fi, not no audio.
Oh, I see. Turn off the volume.
I have 4 damage being delivered. And 8 and 8:30. I'll be up and ready to go by 8. Your mom's coming by 8. Anyway. Your mom's job. I'm just meant for your mom. Your mom's meant for me for Christmas. Try without a video. I do not want video. I'm talking to myself because I'm trying to get this thing working.
You don't have to eat what I'm giving you.
Hiya, Susan.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Carmen. Put yours there.
Let me turn off the speaker.
On your earbud.
In with the bar mitzvah call to responsibility. The handout, which is in Bob's suit
Yeah, that's
jacket,
7
no, it was in his
o'clock.
pocket, which is in the program, the bar mitzvah of Obi Gabriel Blumenfield. And it says this Shabbat, and I missed that yesterday. This day, we celebrate a special moment in the life of our community. We come here from different places, often from different backgrounds, yet we share a common goal: to witness and welcome this sacred rite of passage in the life of one of our young people. A bar mitzvah is the culmination of years of hope and months of preparation, yet it is a starting point as well. It is the beginning of mature commitment, the beginning of full Jewish responsibility, a hint of the taste of adulthood. As a community and as a congregation, we acknowledge your accomplishment, Obi, as we continue reading on the back side here together. And it says this Shabbat, but again, let's read this day. This day we welcome you on the verge of adulthood into the congregation of Israel. You are today teacher of Torah, leader of prayer. You hold within your hands the future of Jewish life. May the promise and potential we see in you come to fruition. May you continue to grow in knowledge of Torah and the life of the Jewish people with your ongoing study. May you have a special place in your heart for your community, for Jews and Jewish needs in our land and in every land. And may we work together towards our ultimate goal, to take our ancient teachings and make them part of our lives as we strive to make this world a better place. We look now to you. Take your place in our midst as we today begin the creation of tomorrow. May you go and grow from strength to strength, and may the Holy One of blessings send success and fulfillment in all your efforts. We give thanks to you, eternal our God, ruling Spirit of the universe, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and for enabling us to reach this day of joy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Amen. Obi, the talit, the beautiful talit that you receive now from the hands of your parents, turn to face them, represents the totality of Jewish history and heritage as it comes to rest upon your shoulders on this occasion.
So this talit was actually made in Israel, and it's called the Joseph talit of many colors. It's as you can see, it's a beautiful talit, and we hope you will wear it with pride.
Pardon my tugging, I'm just trying to make it even. There we go. Okay, face me.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishani b'mitzvotav lehit atech bat tzitzit.
Amen.
Please be seated.
Welcome to the weekday morning service of the Hebrew congregation of St. Thomas. I am Rabbi Michael Feshbach. I'm honored and delighted to be here with this family with whom I have traveled to Israel, who has deep roots in Los Angeles, but even deeper roots here in St. Thomas. Welcome home, Kathy, and your family to this, your other home. I'm honored to be here with Obi, who I watched run around Israel, excited and interested. I am also delighted to be joined by our accompanist, Gilchrist Sproul, and a deep thanks to James Anderson, who has helped streaming this morning's service. We do not have the blessing of streaming every one of our weekday morning services, so I am very grateful. To those of you who are on Zoom, and James, I assume we have on Zoom? 36 so far. Welcome, and we hope... What? 44. That'll keep going up. 44 on Zoom. Welcome to those of you in California. Thank you for getting up early. I hope you have had your coffee. It is quite early in California at the moment. I want to welcome you to this very special place. Many of you know this, but some do not. The Hebrew Congregation of St. Thomas is the oldest synagogue building in continuous use under the U.S. flag, the second oldest such in the Western Hemisphere. There's a little bit something tricky about that claim, but we can go into that another time. But the real reason why when there are cruise ships in, and before COVID, we got hundreds of visitors per week, and that is that we are one of 5 synagogues in the world with sand on the floor. Ever since the hurricanes, I've added the word intentionally or deliberately. But the sand on the floor is really the story of this congregation, and to tell that story as briefly as I can, we have to tell the story of history in many different countries. As you know, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and Spain kicked out the Jews. In fact, it was on the very same day that the Edict of Expulsion went into effect against the Jews of Spain that Columbus set sail. That was probably not an accident. But the Jews who stayed, some left penniless with absolutely nothing, but they were told if you convert to Catholicism, you can keep everything. Remember, there had been Jews in the Iberian Peninsula for 1,000 years. I mean, their families, not individuals. But for a very long time. And so, because this tactic had worked before, some converted on the surface, practiced Judaism in secret, and thought that the regime would pass, the fanatics would pass, there would be a new election, there would be something that would change. Monty Python, however, was correct. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. And the Spanish Inquisition was aimed at, quote, new Christians, and they actually enforced the edict. If you were caught practicing Judaism in secret, you would be put to death. And so, at least in the 1790s, the historical memory was that in the 1490s, these Jews had put sand on the floor to muffle the sound of their footsteps as they came together in prayer. That is the story that 5 synagogues told in the 1790s and early 1800s, 4 in the Caribbean, 1 in Europe, when they placed sand on the floor as a historical memory. It is not necessarily about our ancestors, the promise to Abraham that we would be as numerous as the stars of the sky and the sand on the shores of the sea. It is not necessarily a reminiscence of our wanderings in the desert. The real reason was, at least, whether this happened or not, at least the historical memory of the sand on the floor to be able to practice Judaism in secret. So this congregation preserves a memory of perseverance, creativity, and determination to remain Jewish. As we come together in this spot of Jewish life in the midst of the Caribbean, we step into that story and we take it on as our own. Our service begins. Remember, this is a service and not a performance. We are a congregation and not an audience. And so we ask you to join in as Obi or I lead. Join in together any of the English that you are comfortable affirming. And you have already heard when I tried to sing something that I am a rabbi and not a cantor. We are delighted to have Gilchrist with us as a master of music. But please join in if you know the Hebrew with any of the Hebrew other than certain prayers are a call and response, and then of course Obi's Torah portion itself, which he will chant. We begin with the singing of Ma Tovu, page 30, a beautiful setting of Ma Tovu, but one which may be a little bit less familiar. Page 30.
Oh, hallelujah.
We continue on the top of page 33. My God, I thank you for my life, body, and soul. Help me realize I am something new, someone who has never existed before, someone original and unique in the world. For if there had ever been someone like me, there would have been no need for me to exist. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofe Hol Sa, Umlafli Sot. Page 35. My soul came to me pure, drawn from the reservoir of the holy. All the time it remains within me. I'm thankful for its thirst of compassion and justice. Let my eyes behold the beauty of all creatures. Let my hands know the privilege of righteous deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, asher b'yado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar. The morning blessings on pages 36, 38, and 40, originally recited at home and privately, relate to daily activity of getting up, the alarm clock, the ability to distinguish day from night, the stretching of our limbs, the rubbing of our eyes, the going to stir it up, or Starbucks with the blessing on the very bottom of page 30. Well, it's in here somewhere, about opens the eyes of the sleepy. We continue in Hebrew, then jumping to English, pages 36, 38, and 40. Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts the captive. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. The top of page 42 in Hebrew, and then Obi will lead the bottom of the page in English with our joining together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the words of the Torah be sweet in our mouths, and let the mouths of your people, Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people, Israel, may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches the Torah to your own
Israel.
Baruch atah Adonai, Hamelech la'ed Torah la'amo Yisrael.
Page 44. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. but the study of Torah encompasses them all. We continue with Psalm 150, led by Gilchrist. It is on page 55. This is the last psalm in the book of Psalms, but a very modern setting by Debbie Friedman. Psalm 150, page 55. Hallelujah, big vurotav. Hallelujah, kerov gudlo. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, benevel v'chinu shofar. Hallelujah, benevel v'chinor. Hallelujah, betofu macho. Hallelujah, b'minim v'ugav. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei shama. Hallelujah, b'tziltzalei trua. Kol hanshama tehalel ya. Kol hanshama tehalel ya. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you. Page 57, Chatzi Kaddish. To those of you not familiar with the service, this functions as a kind of divider between parts of the Jewish service. In a conservative or Orthodox service, this can appear 4, 5, 6 times. A Reformed service eliminates redundancy. A Reformed service eliminates redundancy. You're welcome. So we usually only recite Chatzi Kaddish once during the service. This is unrelated to the same words which are used at the end of the service, the Kaddish of morning, the prayer of morning. Page 57. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, be'alma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, bagala, bagala, uv'yizman kariv v'imeru. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach, le'olam lo me'almaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei dekudesha, le'la min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imeru. Amen.
As As we continue with Barhu on page 58, please rise.
Et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. The bottom of page 60 together. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom you formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch ata Adonai, Yotzer HaMa'od. We will open with the English on the bottom of 63, but instead of closing with the Hebrew there, we are then going to jump to the middle of page 62. Gilchrist, this simply changes the cue for you for Vaha Erenenu, but I will look over to you in a moment. The cue will now be your Sinai of life. Together on the bottom of page 63, and Bob, if you'll come up, please. Together. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light-blinded we saw that inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. והארננו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה ולרע את שמך, ולא נבוש ולא ניכלם ולא ניכשל לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא פתחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. והביאנו לשלום בני ארבע הארץ, ותוליכנו כל ממיתות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישרות אתה, ובנו בחרת וקרבתנו לשם הגדול, סלם להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. One sec, they're switching to Debbie Friedman. Page 64.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Mahum Tov Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Mahum Tov Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ויראת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, ובשרתנות על ידך, והיו לטפטפות בעיניך, וכתבתם מזוזות ביתך וישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיהם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות להם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. Page 71 on the bottom, and then on to page 72 for Michamocha.
We are Israel, witnesses to God's covenant. We are Israel, forbidden to worship power. We are Israel, prophets of a vision for all. We are Israel, schooled in the suffering of the oppressed. We are Israel, trying to beat swords into plowshares. We are Israel, teaching sacred words from the Torah. Hate evil, love what is good. Let justice flow as a mighty stream. We are Israel, proclaiming your truth as we did on the shores of the sea.
Michamocha, page 72.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. שירה חדשה,
שיבחו גאולים, לשמך על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו,
אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד.
צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתחי נאומך, יהודה וישראל. גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל Yisrael. As we ask Nia to come forward to join Obi, we have reached the Amidah, the central section of the Jewish worship service. This is a service which locates you in time and place, whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening, whether it is a weekday or Shabbat, a holiday. It is characterized by an opening introduction and then 3 sections we will sing together in Hebrew. That is customarily we are standing. In fact, the word Amidah means standing. I'll ask you to rise in just a second. But for the middle section, even though traditionally it is also recited while standing, I will say you may be seated or you can continue to stand. You may have noticed about this Siddur, this prayer book, that we have the traditional Hebrew on the right hand of an even numbered page. Camera adjustment. And we have the translation, a reasonably faithful translation, also on the even numbered page. And then most of these prayers in the prayer book, it's a 2-page spread. And the right side is the traditional, the left side is the Sitra Atra, the other side. A new age or funky reconceptualization of the prayer in a new way based on more modern insights. When we reach the middle section of the Amidah, this is recited silently. You may continue in the traditional prayers on the even numbered pages, or you can go to the odd side. You can look at the creative, the creative prayers on your own. This is done silently, and then we come back together for the singing of Oseh Shalom, which I believe is on page 100. We rise now on page 74. We face the ark, which is facing St. John, which is actually really facing Jerusalem. We open with Nia joining Obi in leading the introduction on 74, the Avot V'Imahot on 76, Gvurot on 78, and then I will lead the Kedusha on page 82.
Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Mihanara, El Hayom, Yom El Hasadim Tovim, Lekonei Hakol, Lezocher Ashtei Avot Ve'imot, Umevi Gehula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Hozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham, Bezrat Sarah, Tagibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah, Rav Lechushia, Hashif HaRuach Morid HaGashem, Mechaye Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Be'rachamim Rabim, Samech Neflim Derofech Horim, Umatir Asurim, Umechayem Emunato, Yishek Me'afar, Michamocha Bal Gevilot, Umidom Elach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzliach Yeshua, Ne'eman Atal Chayotapo, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol.
Page 82 for the Kedusha. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, kakatuv al yad neviecha, v'kara ze el ze ve'amar, kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvaot, meloch ol haaretz, kevodo leumatam baruch yomeru, baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo, uvdivrei kodshecha katuv lemor, yimloch Adonai leolam, Elohai Zion, Ledor Vador. Hallelujah. We remain standing, but we can face each other. The words Ledor Vador mean from generation to generation.
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador, Nagid Kodad Lecha, Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador,
Ledor Vador, Nagid Kodad Lecha,
Ulenetzach Netzachim, Kedushatcha Nakdish,
Kedushatcha Nakdish. ושפחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם לעולם ועד. לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור נגיד קורא לך. לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור,
לדור ודור נגיד קורא לך. כי אל מלך גדול, גדול וקדוש, וקדוש וקדוש אתה. יא לה 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 לה.
ברוך
ברוך
אתה
אתה אדוני הקדוש.
Seated or standing, the even pages or the odd numbered pages in personal prayer. The bottom of page 100, you may be seated for a brief moment or two. Page 100, Oseh Shalom.
עושה שלום בקרובה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
We have reached the section of the service during which we are going to be taking the Sifrei Torah, 2 Torah scrolls from the Ark, and Obi will be teaching us the meaning of this week's portion as he understands it in a beautiful and powerful Dvar Torah which he has written, and then he will be chanting from the words of the Torah scroll itself. Before we continue to the service, however, just as I introduced the story of the sand on the floor at the beginning of the service, now a word about the scroll from which he will be chanting. The story of the scroll he will be carrying, I will tell you in a minute, actually from in front of the Ark itself. The 2 scrolls on the far right are both, as we look at the Ark, are both from the 1600s. But those 2 scrolls were saved from the fire that was in downtown Charlotte Amalia, In 1831, Penny, I'm looking at you because when I first moved here, you kept correcting me when I got the date for that fire wrong. You can read about that fire, by the way, in a fairly good historical novel about this community called Marriage of Opposites by Alice Hoffman. It is the fictionalized story of the most famous family who has ever been a member of this synagogue, the Pissarro family. Camille Pissarro, born and raised on St. Thomas, the early part of his life, began his drawing here, the founder of French Impressionism. Really wish there was a Pissarro museum here on St. Thomas, perhaps someday. But the fire that took place in 1831 took out 800 buildings in downtown Charlemagne. The book tells the story of men rushing in and saving the eternal light, which you see above you just here now, in front of the ark, in the center of the congregation. That is from the pre-1831 building. And the 2 Torah scrolls. Both of those scrolls have silver instead of wood. They are rather heavy to lift, but I believe Carl is going to be carrying the heavy one in a few moments. Is that right, Carl? Or Jay? Or one of them? As Obi carries the other scroll. So the scroll that he is going to read from the 1600s, still has remarkably clear handwriting. That is a kosher scroll, a scroll certified for ritual use. The story of the other one I will tell you in a moment. As we prepare for the Torah service, we ask the first set of ark door openers to move to the ark at this time. And we ask all those members of Obi's immediate family who are participating in the passing of the Torah from generation to generation to go forward to the in front of the ark at this time. We continue with Seder Kriyat Torah, the service for the reading of Torah, page 104. Please rise. Let's go. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato. We are asking the youngest people in the congregation to come forward to, in a moment, help with our smallest Torah scrolls. But for now, Obi, other than the Xeroxed scrolls which they are about to receive, this is the lightest of our Torah scrolls. You can step up here with me. But it tells the heaviest of our tales. At the beginning of World War II, when Hitler invaded Czechoslovakia, he gave orders to the generals to burn all the Jews and burn all the synagogues, but to save the scrolls and save the silver. The Nazis were, as terrible as they were careful record keepers. You can actually still see the number inscribed on the scroll to this very day. They were going to make a museum to the extinct race after they had killed all the Jews in the world. Fortunately, they lost the war, and after the war, the Allies found this treasure trove of scrolls, and they packed them up carefully, sent them to London, where they were accepted by the Westminster Synagogue, which formed the Westminster Synagogue Holocaust Scroll Memorial Trust. And from there, hundreds, literally hundreds of these scrolls are sent out. Perhaps Temple Judea in Los Angeles has one. My former synagogue in Maryland has one of these scrolls on permanent loan from the Westminster Synagogue. Should there ever be such a time as there would arise a Jewish community again in Budin, Czechoslovakia, we would get, I don't know, these days we would get a tweet, and it would say, we would like our scroll back. Until such a time, it is on permanent loan here. And lest you say that could never happen, Aggie, who is not here with us, but you've met, is our gift shop manager and docent. Aggie and I were present At the last biennial convention of the Reform movement, do you remember conventions? When a lot of people gathered together without masks, in person? I remember those. Maybe someday again. But in December of 2019 in Chicago, a Hillel from Pennsylvania came and on Saturday morning in front of 5,000 Reform Jews, decommissioned their scroll, packaged it up, and it was sent back to Czechoslovakia to a new Jewish community there. Until such a time, you are about to carry this scroll, you're about to step on this sand, which, as I said at the beginning, is a reminder of the greatest moment of persecution in all of Sephardic Jewish history. And you are about to hold in your arms this scroll, which is the greatest moment of persecution in all of Ashkenazi, indeed all of Jewish history at all. And when you step on that sand and you hold this scroll in your arms and you become a bar mitzvah, you are saying, the people who tried to do this to us are no longer here. And the people who tried to do this to us, largely, by and large, outside of a few people in Charlottesville, Virginia, a few years ago, are no longer here. But we are stepping forward into the future. This is the Torah. And the story our people tells, 3,500 years ago, we received the Torah, and it has become the center of our spiritual consciousness ever since. In the metaphor of transmission at the beginning of Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Ancestors, we read Moses received the Torah at Sinai and passed it on to Joshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the, where's Jay? Jay gone. The elders to the prophets to the men and women of the great assembly, and on down through all the generations of poets and philosophers and psalmists and sages who have taken its teaching and brought its message to their own time, until at last it comes to our time, to the arms of those who become uncles representing grandparents who couldn't be here, until at last it comes to the arms of those who become parents, until at last it comes to the arms of the present generation, until at last it comes to Obi's arms, and with some help here, treat this carefully, share it in a minute. Face the ark for a moment. Gadlu l'Adonai iti, u'noromama shemo yachdav, lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hachod, ki chol v'shamayim, please come back, v'haaretz, lecha shamayim v'haaretz, lecha da lechol erosh, romemu, romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, v'hishtachavu, l'hadom raglav kadoshu, romemu, romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, v'hishtachavu, l'hadom raglav kadoshu, ki kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu, romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, l'har kodsho, romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, v'hishtachavu, l'har kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, romemu. Well, your sister, I thought, but.
Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hashtakavu echar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hashtakavu echar kodsho.
Please be seated.
Hello. My Torah portion is called Shemot. It is from the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 1. The Pharaoh of Egypt ordered 2 midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, to kill all the newborn Israelite male babies. The women quietly refused, and the Israelites continued to have male babies. The Pharaoh, upon learning that the babies were being born, was livid and asked, "Why did you disobey me?" The woman lied and said, "The Israelite women were giving birth before we could get there." So the Pharaoh ordered all the male babies to be murdered. Some time later, a Hebrew mother gave birth to a baby boy. Instead of killing him, she raised him for 3 months and then put him in a reed basket and sent it afloat the Nile River. The Pharaoh's daughter found the basket with the baby boy inside and named him Moses, then adopted the child as her own. That child grew up to get kicked out of Egypt and wandered around the desert for several days until he started to have life-changing conversations with God. God told him to save the Israelites. Moses overcame his lack of confidence to follow God's command and to inspire his people and tell the Pharaoh to let my people go. Moses marched the Israelites out of Egypt to freedom. Many stories have been written on the end of the story, but I want to focus on the very beginning. It is then when we see the very first documented case of civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is when you don't follow the rule of law because you are following a higher moral authority, and you are doing so ready to face the legal consequences. In this story, the midwives would suffer death for not following the Pharaoh. They disobeyed him secretly, trying to save as many baby boys as possible. Some scholars believe that the Hebrew word for these women could mean Hebrew midwives, or it could mean midwives of the Hebrews. If the women were Jewish, they would be disobeying the law to protect their own people. But what if Shiphrah and Puah were Egyptian midwives of the Hebrews? Some scholars say these women believed Jewish lives mattered just as much as Egyptian lives, and the order to kill baby boys was immoral and against God, who created each human in the image of God. If these women were not just Jewish, their actions were particularly moving because it shows that the Jews were not alone and others cared for them. Today we see very similar things. About 3,231 years later, Alicia Garza posts a message on Facebook saying she felt a deep sense of grief after the acquittal of George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman is the Florida man who followed, attacked, and killed a black teenager who was wearing a hoodie as he walked home with convenience store snacks. Ms. Garza noted that many people appeared to blame the young man, Trayvon Martin, for his own killing, and not the disease of racism. Patrice Coolers, a Los Angeles community organizer, read the Facebook post and replied using the words for the first time, #Black Lives Matter. I believe she meant that black lives don't matter more than other lives or less, but that they are equally as valuable and precious. If they were seen as such, black children wouldn't be treated the way Trayvon Martin. He was only 4 years older than I am. Or maybe the outcome of Zimmerman's trial would have been different. Ms. Garza and Ms. Coolers are black women trying to save black people through many actions, including civil disobedience. But imagine if they were not black, like Shiphrah and Puah, and believed each life was valuable. Not only would it mean that they had a sense of justice and could see that society and law were upside down, but it would feel good to know that it wasn't just blacks protecting blacks, but it was also others trying to protect us too. Imagine if everybody honored God in this way, and we all tried to protect each other. That's what we Jews are called to do. We are called to be partners in God's work. We have a word for it, tikkun olam. As a black Jew, I think my identity is to position myself to see the injustices that harm my people, and to relate to the injustices harming others. Thanks to my Jewish and black communities and family members, I learned this at a very early age. I remember hearing about injustice and my responsibility to advocate for peace and equality at the age of 7. I wondered why I remembered this year as being the year of my social awakening, so I looked into what was happening then. 2016 was the Kidnapper Clown year, but it was also the year that more than 250 black Americans were killed and 34% of unarmed black people were killed. In 2016, black males, and black men only make up 6% of the US population, were killed. It was the year that an American who supported ISIS gunned down 49 people at a gay nightclub in Orlando. It was the deadliest mass shooting in the United States at the time, and the nation's worst terror attack since 9/11. It was the year that President Donald Trump was elected on an anti-otherness, Make America Great Again campaign, and according to the Anti-Defamation League, anti-Semitic incidences rose drastically post-election. All of that happened in 2016. That's 1 year. I think my identity was also influenced by 2 trips I took a few years ago. First, I went to Lithuania with my family and the Viewpoint School on the David Lebowski Project. I learned about the 220,000 Jews that once lived in Vilnius. I stood on the ground of Ponar, where in 1941, up to 100,000 people, mostly Jews, were marched through the forests in the winter, murdered and buried in large pits over and over for 3 years. When I learned about this, I was horrified. But imagine if Shifra and Pua had lived then. I think they would have tried to do something to save those lives. I also went to Israel with this congregation. I walked in the alleys of the old city, into the Western Wall. I remember seeing a lot of people from all around the world. They were praying and many were kissing this great wall. Being there, I shared a historical link to the people about 5,000 years ago. It felt like a very powerful moment. All these experiences impacted me and shaped my identity and who I am today. My Jewish tradition calls me to be like Shifra and Pua, whether they were Hebrew or Egyptian. I'm called to pursue moral authority. It doesn't have to be in huge ways like Shifra and Pua. Just being a vocal witness can be important. But I hope through my Bar Mitzvah project I can start to do more, such as teaching people life-saving swim skills or contributing towards human rights projects. I want to thank my mom, my dad, and my sister for supporting me on my path to get to this day. I know that I could be pretty difficult. Papa, I'm also sorry you can't be next to me right now, but I feel you're here. I especially want to thank you for inspiring me to pursue my Bar Mitzvah studies and for sharing all of your stories. And Uncle Jay, thank you for standing in for where Papa is. Nana, Papa, and Granddad, thank you for helping me understand my family's histories. And thank you to my teachers, Rabbi Cantor Wisset, Rabbi Feshbach, and Cantor Klieger, and Ravi, for helping me learn my prayers, especially in a very short time. Rabbi Cantor Wisset, thank you for helping me learn what it means to be a bar mitzvah. Rabbi Feshbach, thank you for taking me and my family to Israel and for welcoming all of us here. Thank you to my friends and family who are on Zoom and everybody watching. Your presence means the world to me. I hope to channel my gratitude and lessons I've learned through my bar mitzvah into making this world a better place. A place with empathy, love, justice eclipse, living in fear, selfishness, and ignorance. I hope that all of us can heal the world together and practice Tikkun Olam.
Obi Yasher Koach, as Divrei Torah from bar and bat mitzvah students go, that was really terrific. That was an amazing. At the beginning of our service, At the beginning of our service, we used the phrase teacher of Torah and leader of prayer. You have truly been both already, even before you chant from the scroll. And the Torah that I have learned from you today is that there is a simple and one-word answer to the question, is it our Jewish obligation to stand up for others or to defend ourselves? And the answer to that is yes. To both. Right? Yes, to both. That is our Jewish obligation, to stand up for others and to stand up for ourselves. If you would like to follow along, I have the page number for the revised edition. I'm not sure, we may have both editions, but it's Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 in the book that it says the Torah. And if it also says revised edition, it's on page 346, and then we will be jumping later. In a slightly more traditional move, we are doing the beginning of the Torah portion, but also something called the maftir towards the very end of the Torah portion. We'll be jumping to chapter 5, verse 22 in a little while. I know that approximate part of the Torah because next week's portion was my bar mitzvah portion. I actually remember what my rabbi said to me on the occasion of my bar mitzvah. You have permission to not remember, but I hope you do, what the rabbi says to you today. 1 second, let's make sure we're in the right spot, and Yamdu l'aliyah harishona tamod le'abat Moshe v'Shoshana Yamod Chaim ben Pesach Yamod David ben Chaim v'Sharon Yamod Yonatan ben Chaim v'Sharon. For the honor of the first aliyah, Sharon Blumenfield, Alonzo, Carl Groner, David Groner, and Jonathan Groner. Did I say the last name right? Yep. Okay. All right, so come around to this side. And if you want to, you can use my talit to touch the first word, which is the first word of the book of Exodus, right? Right there, it's obvious in this case. Touch that. And kiss that. And you can drop that for now so I can move back. 1, 2, 3. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Where's your black notebook? And hold that for a second. Where's his? Can I have the black notebook, please? Just in case. I don't think you'll need me, but just in case. Amen. Say amen.
Amen. Va'eileh shemot b'nei Yisrael haba'im Mitzrayma et Yaakov ish ubeto ba'u Ra'um ve'em Shimon Aviv Yehuda Yisahar Zebulun Uvin Yamin Dan ve'Naftali Gad ve'Asher.
Okay, let's put it right here. It may roll, but let's put it here anyway.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Usually we would have you stay up here and on this side, but we have many people for each aliyah, so in this occasion, if you guys can step back down. Ya'amdu l'aliyah hashniya Ya'amod Chaim ben Moshe v'Shoshana Ta'amod Yael Sarabat Moshe v'Yenta Shaindal Ya'amod Caleb Mordecai ben Chaim v'Ya'al Ta'amod Aviva Le'abad Chaim v'Ya'al Lichvot HaTorah. For the honor of the second aliyah, Jay Blumenfield, Jacqueline Blumenfield, Leo Blumenfield, and Lucy Blumenfield. Do you want to take my talit? The first word is right there. Kiss the end of it. Okay. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Vayehi, yeah.
Vayehi kol nefesh yotzei yereh Yaakov shiv'i nafesh vayosef hayav hamitzrayim vayamot Yosef veho ehav veho hadur hahu uvnei Yisrael paru vayishratzu vayirbu vayatmu Beam od me'od. Vatim ole ha'aretz. Oh, Tom.
Excellent. Fabulous. Good job.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam natan b'tofenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishkoach. If you can go back down. It has long been my custom at this time to ask any friends of the bar mitzvah, cousins, young people who are here, anyone who's here under the age of... Nia, how old are you? How old is she? Anybody under the age of 16 to please come forward and stand behind Obi for his aliyah, his call to the Torah. But I will, before you come up, a fair warning. After the closing blessing, an aliyah is like a Torah sandwich. It's got the blessing before, then it's got, are there any vegetarians here? Okay, then it's got 3 slices of meat, which are the verses of the Torah. Otherwise, I would have had to say slices of tofu. It doesn't work as well. Then there's the closing blessing. That's what it is called an aliyah. But following his closing blessing, I'm going to turn to you. I'm going to ask if there's any questions that you have about the Torah, about the scroll, about the synagogue, about anything remotely relevant. If you have any questions, that is great, and we'll talk about them. And if you don't, there will be this awkward, uncomfortable silence as we just stare at each other. So come on up. And it is a traditional custom that you read the aliyot, and then at the very end, there's a little bit more. So this is from the very end of the portion. Vayashav Moshe, that's where it's going to be, okay? All right, come surround and Ya'amod, 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 Habachor Habar Mitzvah, Daniel ben Irachmiel, Lichvod HaTorah. For the honor of the final aliyah, the maftir, the bar mitzvah, Obi Gabriel Blumenfield, Lichvod HaTorah. Let them hear you on St. John.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorah.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamevarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bahar banu mikol ha'amim ve'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Vayashov Moshe El Adonai Vayomar Adonai Lama Harayota La'am Hazeh Lama Zeh Shalatani Gume'az Vati El Paro Ledaber Bishmeha Heirah La'am Hazeh Vehotzel Ohit Shalta Et Amecha Vayomer Adonai El Moshe Ata Tireh Asher E'eseh Le'Faro Ki Veyad Hazaka Yeshalhem Uveyad Hazaka Yegar Hashem Me'artso. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hayei olam nata betoheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yishkoach. Take a breath. How do you feel?
I feel good.
Okay. All right, now, if there's any difficult questions, I'll make you answer them. So, are there any questions about the Torah, about the scroll, about the reading, about anything at all, about the synagogue, about the building, about anything you were thinking of during the service, about anything remotely relevant? Looking at me like they have anybody? Okay. So, I want you to take a look at these, other than Nia. Nia, you're disqualified from this because you know the answer. Do you see the sort of big, bold letters? Those are all consonants in Hebrew. Do you see the dots and squiggles under the letters? In Hebrew, those are the vowels. Now I want you to come here closely and take a look at the Torah scroll itself. Come on over. Do you see any dots and squiggles in here? Good. Otherwise, we'd have to find an eye doctor, right? This is written entirely in consonants. There are no vowels in the scroll of the Torah. So the question I have for you, Obi not only read this, he sang it, and he sang it really beautifully. So the question I have for you is, how could he possibly have done that? That's really hard. So how did he do it? Well, yes, there is some memorization. I will confess, you're not supposed to, but there is some memorization involved on the part of some kids. That's true. But the answer is, please read this. This would be, I'm going to give you the next word, easy. This would be easy if you knew the words. This would be easy if you knew the words. There's one word. This is how Israelis learn to read. There is one word in this sentence which could make sense in past tense or in present tense, and it could be new or no. So in an Israeli newspaper, you might occasionally get a vowel just with that word. But this is how Israelis learn to read. But it's not what we're used to. So I want to convey to you what Obi has done here is not easy. He has learned to read Hebrew. He has learned his portion. He has learned to sing his portion. And then he learned to do this from the scroll with no vowels. It was quite amazing. Thank you for asking that really interesting question. Any other questions? All right, if you go back down, do so quietly. We're about to turn to one of the most serious moments of the service. Through the merit of our ancestors and the merit of reading Torah, our tradition says that we are allowed to invoke God's blessing for the most deeply held yearnings of our lives. And of course, when a loved one is sick, when someone we know is ill, that is constantly walks with us all the time. And so in a moment, I will give you a chance to add the names of loved ones of your own who are ill and in need of our attention. Mishaberach Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzhak, V'Yaakov, V'Imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, V'Leah, Hu Yivarech V'Yirapeh et HaCholim Ha'ela. O God, who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, send your blessing and your healing, your comfort and your hope to all those we name at this time. Mark Borden, Donald Pomerantz. Any others in the congregation here to add a name for healing?
Jason Banks.
Anyone on Zoom? You can unmute and add a name in the prayer for healing. All those who are suffering Omicron and may not even know it yet. Baruch atah Adonai rofeh cholim. We praise you, O God, who helps us heal, who brings us comfort. Obi, one set of grandparents is here with us today, but another is not. But there is a story. First of all, I believe they are with us on Zoom, but there is a story about your grandfather, Michael, which we hear at this time. Which we hear at this time.
All right, pretend that I'm kind of like me, but like 25 years older. Okay, this is in my dad's voice, so take it as you will. As you know, this is the moment when in Jewish tradition, Obi is seen as coming into his own to accept the responsibility and joys of his Jewish tradition, to observe the religious precepts, and to live according to the values of his Jewish heritage. It is also said that the normal lifespan of a man is 70 years, and thus an 83-year-old man can be considered 13 in a second lifetime. It is my great fortune to not only be here, sort of, but to be able to arrive at this second bar mitzvah just as my youngest grandson has arrived at his first. I am so proud of the wonderful job that Obi has been doing today, the hard work that he has put in to get him to this day, the curiosity and understanding that have been part of his preparations, and the satisfaction he can have upon making this religious commitment are now part of the man that he is becoming. Being Jewish for me has always carried great meaning. It is, of course, the tradition of my ancestors and the substrate upon which Susan and I tried to raise our children. My great-grandmother, who was a physician, died shortly before my bar mitzvah. I estimate she was born in about the 1850s. I have a photograph of myself walking with her and holding hands. When I hold Obi's hand, I imagine our Jewish tradition passing on to him. Watching our grandchildren raised in this tradition has been a source of great joy for us. The Jewish values of respecting human dignity and welcoming the stranger, the importance of social justice, truth, and reaching for peace, those of listening, questioning, and learning, and the importance of repairing the world are the foundations on which we have been proud to stand. Bob and Kathy have together raised their children with these values at the center. For Bob, Judaism has been his birthright, and although Kathy is not Jewish, they had agreed to raise their children in the Jewish faith. We have been filled with awe and gratitude at how passionately Kathy has led the way, providing Nia and Obi with the necessary Jewish education, as well as instilling the love and respect for Jewish values, to say nothing about the organization and planning of this special moment. This can't be overstated. It is also so special that we are participating in this occasion today here at the historic synagogue in St. Thomas. Not only is St. Thomas such a special place in Kathy's heritage, but Susan and I have had the privilege of getting to know Rabbi Feischbach as well. In the summer of 2019, we joined Bob, Kathy, Nia, and Obi on a tour in Israel, led by Rabbi Feischbach. It was so special to be in that meaningful place with the family. And it was made even more so because of the erudition, passion, and pride that Rabbi Feischbach brought to his role in leading that group. I am sure that becoming a bar mitzvah today is even more meaningful to Obi after he could see and understand the ancient roots like the Temple Mount or Masada or other ancient ruins or even thriving cities. I recall Obi on his own saying a silent prayer at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. I also recall Obi's fascination with what occurred at Masada, his curiosity about ancient coins found there, and his excitement about being able to have one purported to be more than 1,000 years old. We are very fortunate that when Susan and I moved out to California 13 years ago, Bob and Kathy found a house for us on their block in Woodland Hills. That was about 20 minutes from our other children, Sharon, Jay, Jacqueline, and grandchildren, Lucy and Leo. It allowed us to watch firsthand Obi and his sister and cousins develop into fantastic people. It also allowed us to host many of the Jewish holidays, to include our immediate family, as well as my brother-in-law and his family, including his son Carl with wife Christine and sons Jacob, David, and Jonathan, some of whom are here today. Tradition and love that have encompassed Obi all his life. Obi has amazing empathy and intellect. He really listens to what others say. He is curious and he cares. He goes out of his way to understand, respect, and support others. He researches things in which he's interested, and he's able to explain complex ideas to others in ways that allow others to understand. He loves to play, but he's also always aware of and concerned about the feelings of others. Clearly, he has incorporated the letter and the spirit of the teachings of this moment. I would like to make one final point. For my bar mitzvah all those years ago, my father's parents, my grandparents, gave me a beautiful gold logline watch engraved on the back with the name, my name, and the date of my 13th birthday. I have worn this watch to all major events, including the kids and other grandkids' B'nai Mitzvah, and I am wearing it today. But now, I would like to pass it on to Obi, so it will be worn at many future important events. I have added an engraving of Obi's name and the date of his 13th birthday. Mazel tov, Obi. May you enjoy the beautiful life ahead of you. Give Obi the watch. Now, one thing that's not written here, one thing that's not written in here that I believe is also a tradition that I will just tell you since it's not on my pages, is in our family, for some reason, I don't exactly know why, the men in the Blumenfield family always wear their watch with the face pointing this way. I don't know why, but it has been a tradition for generations, and I pass it on to you with this watch that I put on you. Is that the right? Yeah, there you go. Boom, boom, you wear it like that. Beautiful. All right. Mazel tov. Here, give me a hug, buddy.
At this time, we call Kathy and Bob forward, and as I said to you the other day, Obi, their job at this point is to be interesting. Your job is to look interested. You have to succeed even if they don't. And that is one of the great life skills that one learns along the way. To the microphone, right?
Over here, Obi. Obi, we are so proud of you. And I am particularly happy to pass on my experience on becoming a bar mitzvah. An experience that my parents provided me, theirs to them, and so on through many generations. And I'm so grateful to your mother, Kathy, my wonderful wife, for really driving this and helping make it happen. She is an amazing mom and an amazing wife. Let me tell you, one of the things I remember most about my bar mitzvah studies was that they weren't easy. Oh, thank you. You're pushing me toward the mic. Thank you. Is that they weren't easy. In fact, they were a struggle. And at the time, I didn't fully understand what it would all add up to. Nonetheless, looking back, it was a foundational experience of my life. By the end of my bar mitzvah studies, I felt I grew 2 inches. And you appear a little taller to me today. You really do. In the Jewish tradition, you have become a man. While neither modern American society nor your parents are quite ready to grant you that title, you have definitely entered a new stage of maturity, responsibility, and growth. There are 3 primary values that I took away from becoming a bar mitzvah that you too may have experienced, and I hope you have. And these values are values that still guide me today. They involve struggle, service, and community. First, struggle. One doesn't get handed the title bar mitzvah by virtue of birth or station. One doesn't get a bar mitzvah as a possession or an award. You make a choice to become a bar mitzvah, and that process isn't easy. It takes years. It's hard, but from struggle often comes strength. I've found that most things that are truly gratifying involve struggle. While it might seem preferable to just be handed things, when you really work for something, it's much more meaningful. And I'm not just talking about material things, I'm talking about achievements and goals and relationships. Second is service. Becoming a bar mitzvah involves learning about your responsibility to help fix what's wrong with the world. You learn through your Hebrew school studies, through your service project, and hopefully you observe it in both your parents, as we are both focused on service through our work. But service isn't just about what one does professionally. It's about how you interact with the world. It is, at its core, caring for others, which is something that can manifest in an infinite number of ways. Leading all of us in prayer, as you have done today, is one such way. And yes, while it is your bar mitzvah, it isn't just about you. It's about the entire community, which leads me to the third value, community. When you read the Torah today, you added your voice to thousands of years of history and a conversation that connects us all through time. And in becoming a bar mitzvah, you deepened your ties to your Jewish heritage and community. And it's important to remember that community doesn't just happen. Your love of it alone won't will it into existence. Building community takes work. While technically community is a noun, in actuality, it should probably be a verb. If you want community to be there, you have a responsibility to participate in it, nurture it, and defend it, and improve it. That is the case for all communities that you're a part of. As a Jew, as an African American, as a member of our family. So these three core values, struggle, service, and community, have framed much of my approach to life, family, and work. And by becoming a bar mitzvah, these values, hopefully, are taking on greater prominence in your life. And I look forward to hearing what has resonated with you after we debrief about this whole bar mitzvah thing. And I hope you carry forward all of this with your experience. We are so proud of you. And now I hand it to your mother.
Son, I am so impressed with the skills you've acquired, experiences you've had, and gifts you possess at your young age, including now becoming a bar mitzvah. I hope that in achieving all of the skills and the learning and the talents that you will acquire in life, that you will regularly ask yourself good questions like, what am I doing all of this for? In answering this particular question, throughout your life, I hope that you will reflect on the words of your bar mitzvah speech and have ambitions that are broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others. That like Shipra and Prua, you use your gifts of mind, body, and spirit to help those who are treated unfairly, unjustly, or living in despair, and that you will help heal our earth. Obi, we've told you this many times, but it is really true, and it sticks out for us. Your father and I have never experienced a time like the one we are in now. And this time calls upon us all to walk in a spirit of love. What does that mean? Well, you needn't go much farther than your own name. Obi, which means one with heart. Such heart is associated with love, compassion, and being selfless. The energy that comes from having heart often comes from connecting to something beyond or bigger than yourself. These times also require us to take personal responsibility. And becoming a bar mitzvah, you learn that you're now responsible for your own actions. This is your path. As a bar mitzvah, you can't make excuses or blame others for your mistakes. This is part of your newfound maturity that Daddy just spoke about. But please, don't think of this responsibility as a burden. It's liberating. It means that you can take control of your destiny. As Papa said, you are a beautiful, creative, smart, and talented person. And you have the ability to shape the world and the power to make it better. I'm excited to see all the ways in which you pursue your Jewish values, the questions that you explore through your life, and the solutions that you craft to the challenges before us all. As we tell you every day, you are a loved child. I hope you feel the support of everyone who's in this temple today and everyone who is beaming through the Zoom. We love you, Obi.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God shine in you and through you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And give to you the gift of peace, of shalom, in the world into which you step now as a Jewish adolescent. God help us. Of peace in all of your relationships, and most importantly, of peace in your own heart. And let us say, Amen. Obi, I'll do this a little quickly because I think they're probably waiting for us down the street, but the first of several gifts given to you, Bob, do you have the certificate? Inside the certificate, you will find another sheet of paper, and that is a gift certificate. You are becoming bar mitzvah in a Reform synagogue. So this is a certificate for $250 towards the cost of it. Now, I know you've been to Israel already, but you went to Israel with family. You didn't go to Israel with your peers. So this is a certificate for $250 toward the cost of a high school age Reform movement trip to Israel. Please God, we will all get past Omicron and any other variants and be able to travel at some point soon. We present this certificate to you and the nifty certificate, as well as this special mezuzah, which is shaped like the entrance to the synagogue. So you will always have, wherever you go on your journeys, when you place this mezuzah on your doorpost, you will always have a reminder of this place, this space, and this very special moment. At this time, we ask our second set of ark door openers to move towards the ark. Bob, I think you left a little too soon, but who is holding we ask the Torah holder to come forward and the Torah dresser to come forward as well. As I lift the Sefer Torah, you let me roll it back a little bit, and you can see the beginning of the book of Exodus, which we opened with, in the gap in between the end of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus. As we lift the Sefer Torah, please rise. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei v'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe al shlosha devarim al shlosha devarim al shlosha devarim ha'olam hazeh al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim al shlosha devarim, the breastplate, al shlosha devarim. This one's ours, not yours. Ve'al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Our service for the returning the Torah to the Ark continues on page, I think it's 110. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado hodo al eretz v'shamayim vayaren keren le'amo tehila lecho Chasidav livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. For the sake of time, we are going to skip Eitz Chaim and the reading here. We move immediately to the concluding section of the service, the bottom of page 586 for Aleinu and Gilchrist. I'm going to skip Shehunoteh from the middle and jump right to V'ne'emar. The bottom of 586. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula liotzer b'reishit Shelo kegoye haratzot velo samanu kemishpachot adama Shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'ne'emar V'haya Adonai Lemelech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo U'Shemo There are stars whose radiance is visible on this earth, though they have long since ceased to exist. There are people whose light and whose warmth continue to shine for us, though they are no longer among us. These stars which shine in the dark of the night, they light the way for humankind. We remember at this time these special family remembrances, members of the family who are no longer with us. Bob, I printed that list earlier, and I seem to have printed out a different list. 1 second. I'm going to rely on you for memory of those names, although actually, no, I have it here. because you texted it to me yesterday. Michael MacLeod, Janet MacLeod, Whitney MacLeod, Virginia MacLeod, Ruth Groner, David Groner, Millie Groner, Daniel Groner, Abner Blumenfield, Clara Blumenfield, Patsy Coker, Gregory Canton, Mario Watlington, Lycia Watlington. The memories of all of our loved ones are with us. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as we turn now to Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. And as is the tradition in most Reform synagogues, we rise as a congregation as a whole for the Kaddish Yatom, for the Mourner's Kaddish itself. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, b'alma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei techol Beit Yisrael, b'agala uvizman kariv imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah m'vorach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel, v'imru, amen. At this time of pandemic and plague, of terrible loss everywhere, we take into our hearts, we are aware of all those that our country, our community, our congregations have lost, and we pray that God, the source of peace and healing, will send hope and health and peace and comfort to all those who are suffering the pain of loss everywhere. And together, let us say, amen. We conclude our service with, Gilchrist, what do you have there? Which setting, Hitman? Or the start slow and then get faster Hasidic Song Festival setting of Adon Olam. Those of you who are from California might be very comfortable with the slow beginning. Those of you who are from New York can handle the ending. Adon Olam, the words are on page 625. Adon Olam, Asher malach, b'terem kol, Yetzir nivra, leid nasa, v'chefso kol, Azai melech, Shemo nikra. Ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hovei ve'hu yeh betifara. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa V'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Livado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yeh B'tifara. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa V'chefso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Livado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yeh B'tifara V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh B'tifara. A good day, and because of COVID protocols, we have moved the and it also is raining. Some of the time we have moved the Kiddush and Motzi here. It is not the Shabbat Kiddush, so it is a short version, assuming I can reach it. Well, it's a short version whether I can reach it or not. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. And the blessing using bread praising God who brings forth bread from the earth. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Mazel tov in Hebrew, mazel tov in Yiddish. Nicely done, yasher koach. And welcome to everyone. Thank you all for being here. To those of you on Zoom, is anybody left with us on Zoom? Remarkably patient. The number actually grew. It is wonderful being with you. There will be a YouTube version available as a permanent record, so I can send you that link, or we'll post it fairly soon. And have a wonderful celebration. Gilchrist, thank you for being here. James, thank you for being here. Obi, thank you for being here. And to all of you who are here with us today, thank you so much. Mazel tov. Don't forget. You have things up here. You can taste the challah, the wine. And thank you all